Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to today's webinar on cultural heritage and tourism, best practice from Asia Pacific. As many as you know, cultural heritage, and tourism are keenly intertwined. Today, we'll be discussing best practices in cultural heritage and tourism, where we will explore how communities and destinations can better harness tourism to show the world what makes them unique, and in the process, make revenue to preserve significant buildings, traditions, and skills for generations to come. Now, before we get to today's webinar, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Montakarn. I am the Chief of Staff at the Pacific Asia Travel Association, and I will be your host for today. I just had one quick note to share with everybody here today. As you know, on the bottom of your Zoom browser, you'll see two functions, the chat and the Q&A. Feel free to use the chat function to engage with other participants. However, please do not submit any questions to the speakers using this function. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, please submit the questions using the Q&A function as shown on your screen. As I said, we will have a panel discussion later in this webinar, and we will be taking questions from the audience. So please do feel free to submit any questions using the Q&A function as shown on your screen. Excuse me. And now, without further ado, we've come to our first presentation before we get to our panel discussion. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to today's webinar, the Director of Public Policy, APAC at Airbnb, Mr. Stephen Liew. Stephen? Hello.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everyone.
Oh, you want to turn your camera on?
Yeah, we go again. Sorry about that.
Nope. All right, stage is all yours.
Thank you. Let me just share screen. Great. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this webinar that is co-organized by PATA and Airbnb. I'm really excited to be here. And it's also a great privilege to be in the company of my fellow panelists from the Seoul Tourism Organization, Tourism and Events Queensland, and UNESCO. Asia Pacific is a very diverse region, as we all know. But however, we have found a consistent theme across all the markets that we're in, and that is the importance of cultural heritage. We believe that the Airbnb platform is actually very well suited for the promoting of this particular form of tourism. When an Airbnb guest comes to book a home for a stay on our platform and arrive at a destination, we want them to feel fully immersed in the local culture. And we believe that staying in a heritage home is one of the best ways to do so. We know this kind of tourism can be good for everyone if it's done properly. We're preserving the architectural heritage of a place. We're driving tourism to a more dispersed area across any market. And we are supporting the local economies in all those little places that we are talking about. So please allow me to take the next few minutes to share with you some of the things, some of the initiatives that Airbnb has been doing to preserve and promote the cultural heritage in APAC. But before I do that, I thought I would do a little bit of a plug of an amazing property that we have, which is an example of the kind of heritage building that we can bring onto the Airbnb platform. This is an actual castle in the town of Hirado in Nagasaki Prefecture in Japan. So if you were to scan the QR code that I have on the left corner of the screen, you will be able to get to the booking page for this particular castle. So last summer, I had the privilege to spend some time with the people who worked really, really hard to bring this castle to life. The local government and an operator actually spent combined almost $1 million to refurbish the whole castle to be ready as a short-term accommodation. And in summer, they invited me over to test the place and then to also give them some of my feedback. And after that, we actually worked with the team to finally bring them onto our platform. So from now, if you ever go to Japan and you feel like you want to have a castle stay, this is one of the options that you have. Now, apart from big shiny object like the castle stay, we realize there's a whole range of historical homes across the world. And as such, how do we guide our guests to find these historical homes? So in July last year, Airbnb launched what we call categories. And we have a historical homes category, which you can find on our mobile app at the top of the page. Now, if you were to slide the icon until you find the historical homes icon, you will then see all the historical homes that are available on our platform. As part of the launch campaign, we decided that Europe would be the first place that we can test out our concept. We donated 10 million euros to a group of heritage associations across Europe. The purpose of the donation is to work with this association, the local government, and the owners of those historical homes to renovate, to restore, and to bring their historical homes onto Airbnb or any other OTAs that they wish to use in order to offer the historical homes for short-term stay. As of today, we have more than 45,000 of these heritage stays across all of Europe. After the success of Europe, we decided that we could do the same thing here in APAC. So I'm going to show you just three examples very quickly, what we have done so far. Now, we'll start off with Japan. As some of you will know, there's a whole range of heritage buildings in Japan, ranging from the castle that I've shown you earlier to kominkas, which are basically old homes that are owned by commoners, to machiya, which are shop houses, townhouses. A lot of them can be found in Kyoto, Kanazawa, for example, or noka, which are old farmhouses that you can find in a lot of the rural towns across Japan. Then there are also very interesting things like samurai house, temples, and shrines, and even old ryokan inns, which they are all now increasingly, we're trying to bring them onto our platform. Now, to encourage the people in Japan to want to renovate and repurpose their historical homes into short-term accommodation, we recently also donated $1 million to the Japan Kominka Association. The purpose of the donation, again, just like in Europe, is to support homeowners who are keen to renovate and then repurpose their historical homes to be used as short-term accommodation. So this partnership is ongoing right now. We are selecting old homes that we want to renovate together with the homeowners. And we're also conducting a lot of workshops across Japan to basically educate potential hosts as to how they can be part of this momentum that we have. And then 2 weeks ago, Airbnb also launched a global marketing campaign in partnership with the Suganuma village in Toyama Prefecture. That's the house that you see here is the house that we were promoting. You may have seen it on LinkedIn pages or social media pages or even some travel magazine. We are offering for the first time a 2-night stay in this historical house, which is built in this way called the Gasho Zukiri house. This particular type of house is very unique to this part of Japan, and it's the first time that people can actually stay overnight in this type of house. As of today, we have about 500 historical homes listing in Japan. A quarter of them are actually located in rural areas like this one. We believe this is a very important aspect of our campaign because this is one of the ways that we want to help Japan manage, number one, their 10 million abandoned home challenge, and also the rural decline challenge. So we hope to be able to put in some effort to help them on the rural revitalization of Japan. Now, moving on to Korea. So if you look at what I have on my background, this is actually a picture of a real hanok that I stayed in when I was in Seoul in April. But as of today, we already have about 860 hanoks across Korea, and 130 of them are actually in the city of Seoul. I would like to take this opportunity to also do a shout out to my fellow panelists, Mr. Sanghoon from the Seoul Tourism Organization, who was a really great partner in our efforts to bring more hanoks in Korea and in Seoul onto the Airbnb platform. Just come back to the same hypothesis that we believe that to give you a totally immersive cultural experience. You shouldn't be just limiting yourself to wearing a hanbok and taking a picture of your hanbok, or having Korean cuisine like bibimbap or some gaidang, and then you stop at that. Why not also stay in a traditional Korean house to get that fully immersive experience, to understand how Korean people actually live, how the neighborhoods actually function. So this is what we are trying to do across Korea. And finally, the last example and the most recent one, last month we sent a team of folks to India, and then we signed an MOU with the Ministry of Tourism in India. And the purpose of the MOU, the aim of the MOU is to showcase the amazing collection of different types of heritage homes that they have in India. So we have palaces, we have really nice Art Deco bungalows in Calcutta, we have amazing colonial era villas in Goa. So all of these amazing properties we would like to be able to showcase to the whole world, and to hopefully invite some guests to come and book these kind of places. As at this moment, we already have 400 historical homes in India listed on Airbnb. And unlike in Japan, where we only have one castle, in India we have 20 castles. They're all available for booking. So I've come to the end of my presentation, and just want to say that these are 3 examples of how Airbnb is currently investing in heritage tourism. We really believe that this is a game changer in how people can travel and enjoy local culture, understand local history, local heritage. So this is an open call to anyone out here in the audience, whether you are an individual who owns a heritage home, or you are a destination marketing organization interested in showcasing the type of unique architectural heritage that you have. We would love to hear from you. You can get in touch with me through Pata, or you can just try to find me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for your quick presentation. And we're actually jumping to our panel discussion now. So don't go anywhere, Stephen. So with that, please welcome my fellow panelists. Stephen, I just mentioned before, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the panel discussion, the Executive Director of the Tourism Industry Division at the Seoul Tourism Organization, Mr. Sanghoon Liew. And
hi, everyone.
And next we have the Stakeholder and Industry Engagement Director at Tourism and Events Queensland, Ms. Laura Jones. And last and certainly not least is the Program Officer for Culture at UNESCO Bangkok here in Thailand, Kun Montakarn Kittipaisalsilp.
Hello, good afternoon.
So, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today for this panel discussion. And just remind everybody, if you have any questions for our panelists, please do drop them in the Q&A at the bottom of your browser. So let me stop sharing this, and we'll jump right into our panel discussion. So Stephen already gave us some kind of examples of how Airbnb works with destinations in terms of protecting cultural homes in Japan and India and Korea. But I want to ask all the panelists here, how can tourism be used as a way to fund the protection of cultural heritage and make revenue to preserve significant buildings, traditions, and skills for generations to come? So I guess I'll ask Laura first. That you're like top of my screen. So Laura, how is it done over there in Queensland?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country from where I'm joining you today, in Brisbane, the Turrbal and Yagara people, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and country and community, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and particularly as we're commemorating and celebrating NAIDOC Week here in Australia at the moment. To answer your question, tourism for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities is an incredible opportunity to showcase culture while at the same time creating positive social impact on those communities. It allows them more opportunity to live on country by providing economic employment and opportunities locally as well. It also promotes the preservation of culture as knowledge gets passed down, and for it to be shared in an appropriate way with visitors, which is always very important. There's continued opportunity to work with organisations like Tourism Events Queensland, our regional tourism organisations and local governments, and for local tourism experiences that are owned and operated by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, but also with businesses who are keen to support and employ Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders with their tourism experience. It is important, however, that stories, the histories, the cultures are shared authentically and with permission. And throughout this panel, I will share some very specific examples as we delve into some other questions. But Queensland sees there's a really incredible strategic opportunity for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander tourism experiences. John Huggins, a Bidjara and Birragubba Juru man, joined Tourism Events Queensland last year, along with Tourism Events Queensland's commitment to reconciliation via a Reconciliation Action Plan. We absolutely have a commitment in this area and see it as a real opportunity of growth. So yes, and we're sort of guided by our Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander subcommittee of our board. And that vision is really to see Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, cultures, histories celebrated and truth-telling valued. And the way to do that really is through tourism. So that's a way to preserve and promote and protect. And we want to see equal opportunity and self-determination supporting that economic, environmental as well, and social benefits amongst community. And we want to see that growth for Queensland tourism and the events industry. And like I said, I'll dive into a few more examples of where that happens across the state through some of the other panel questions.
All right. Well, let's hear from Montakarn. I mean, UNESCO is it works, specifically in this area. How can tourism be used to sort of fund and protect these, buildings, traditions, cultures?
Yes. So I'm just going to speak from a larger perspective outside UNESCO as well first. Then, well, different countries, as I know, and one very good example in Australia, as Laura said, different countries have different mechanisms and approaches to fund the maintenance of the tourism destinations, the historic one, in particular using the tourism revenue. Like for Thailand, just for example that I have heard is its National Act on Historic Monuments, Objects and Museums provide for a thing called Heritage Conservation Fund that comes from the admission fee to some of the historic monuments across the country. This central fund mechanism allows the money to be collected from the tourism sector and to flow to the heritage sector, the two sectors that normally do not work together. They are in completely different ministries, right? So the silos never meet. Without like this, but this central fund mechanism help them to work together without having to actually, directly work together, especially in the angle of financial. However, in some countries, sadly, the public sector has their limitation by things like the national level well-being and priorities. And the conservation has become something that is not the key economic related priority. So income either from admission fee or from other forms of tourism activities could end up going first to the subsidizing of the supply chain or increasing tourism infrastructure, which is totally understandable, and to tourism promotion campaigns, for example. This is the case where we might have seen, like when we travel, you might have seen when you go to a place that have like fancy visitor facilities and everything for tourists, but and very big global advertisement and all, but internally the historic destinations and local communities around them are actually facing rundown. So when it comes back to your question, when it comes to the action that UNESCO are taking in terms of like trying to bridge the public and private sectors together in partnering to help preserving the cultural heritage, I would say that that's actually one of the key global priority that UNESCO is working on. We advocate for 4 Ps, which is the public, private, people partnerships. So we call it 4 Ps. One of the key examples for that is at UNESCO Bangkok, which is now we call it UNESCO Multi-Sectoral Regional Office in Bangkok. We have been managing for the past 20 years, since 2000, an award program called the UNESCO Asia Pacific Awards for Cultural Heritage Conservation. This award program is not like the World Heritage status, so we don't salute the place for being the oldest, the biggest, the most beautiful, but we actually give the awards to praise the public-private partnership in conserving and restoring these local historic places, so local level historic places. In fact, one of the Hanoks in Korea, like what Mr. Stephen just presented, also won this conservation awards a few years ago as well. And as well as many temples and houses and chop houses, private properties in Japan, Southeast Asia, China, Australia, and other 25 countries in Asia Pacific. So that's one of the examples that UNESCO is working on right now in terms of emphasizing the importance of public-private partnerships here.
Well, thank you very much, Kun Montakarn. And Mr. Lee, what about, we have an example from Stephen. What other ways can tourism use to fund protection of culture and significant buildings, traditions that maybe Seoul's doing?
Okay, when you say about the funding, you might saying about the money, but the people here in Seoul, they are enjoying the foreigners have interest in our own houses. So if the Koreans are interested in enjoying such a phenomena, then it helps to preserve Hanok. So actually, preservation of Hanok was started not for the tourism, but now it's used for tourism. So it has long journey, like a long story about 30 years. So let me say about it. The Seoul metropolitan government has been implementing the Hanok preservation policy for 20 years since the year of 2000. Back in 2000, Seoul's rapid urban growth and development since the 1970s had led to a sense of crisis about the city's identity, asking, what kind of city is Seoul? The first period of the Hanok preservation policy was the Bukchon Village Beautification Project, which began in 2000 to revitalize Bukchon, Seoul's representative Hanok residence. And the second period expanded to include areas in and out of Hanyang, the old name of Seoul Castle, and the third period to include all of Seoul. Initially, the program started with preserving and improving the physical landscape, like Hanok itself and alleyways. But recently, it has evolved into restoring the social landscape, like local culture, traditional residential culture. In terms of quantity, a total of 1,033 Hanoks were spotted until 2022. And with the announcement of a new plan called Seoul Hanok Reinvention in this year of 2023, 200 Hanoks will be spotted every year for the next 10 years, resulting in spot for 2,000 Hanoks. The new plan includes up to 20% of the cost of renovating or building a Hanok, the creation of 10 new Hanok villages, and the establishment of a Hanok global lounge to spread the Hanok residential culture. So we are more interested in the preserving our culture and sharing with foreign tourists. We are more focused on that.
No, that's very interesting how it started off just preserving the culture first and how it then transitioned to the tourism. So I'll ask a question for Stephen here. I mean, you know, your model has seen a lot of family homes like the Montakarn Korean being turned into accommodation for travelers, contributing to the sensitive adaptation of heritage homes. Can you tell us about the traveler demands to stay in such places, whether it's in Korea or India?
So Paul, thanks for the question. You know, since the launch of the historical homes category, we've seen amazing amount of interest, you know, from the people who are sliding the icons to historical homes to look at the listings and actually booking some of the listings. It is a new way of people traveling. I think, you know, we are still in the process of really educating, engaging our guests to get them to understand that don't just stay with a wearing clothing or eating food or taking part in some experiences, but staying in a unique historical homes can be part and parcel of the complete experience. And I think we're seeing very healthy demand for it. We're very passionate about this particular category, and we're continuing to expand into new markets in APAC, looking for more historical homes that we can bring on board. Paul, you there? I think you freeze up. Thank you.
Frozen. Sorry about that. So I'm actually going to jump to the question we got in the Q&A, just kind of go around to transition that really easy. So the question here is, this person is curious about Airbnb experiences. Do you have an approach to cultural heritage experiences?
So we don't have anything specific for cultural heritage experiences at the moment, but we do have an experience product offering on our platform. So on Airbnb, you can toggle within the options. It's either homes or experiences. And there are plenty of interesting, unique experiences where very passionate and knowledgeable hosts are actually offering experiences for guests that want to understand a little bit about the tradition of a place. You know, what are the things that people do in the past? So, for example, dressing in traditional costumes is one of them. Learning how to cook traditional cuisines of that particular destination. All of these experiences are available for booking on our platform. Even during COVID, we actually transferred some of these experiences online, and it was really, really popular. I remember attending one where we had a sake tasting experience that was hosted by a sommelier. So those are the examples that we do.
I assume that they're mostly driven by the host then, right? Not by Airbnb. So I guess that would kind of answer that question there. So let's move back to Laura, because you touched upon it before when you talking about the reconciliation plans at Queensland. So, but how are Indigenous tourism operators in Queensland successfully using tourism to preserve and promote their cultural heritage? Give us if you have a case study, it'd be even great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first in Queensland is home to two of the oldest living cultures in the world, the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander cultures. We've got over 60,000 years of continuous living culture, and Queensland offers tourism and events experiences that celebrate the diversity of both of those cultures, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples, histories and cultures, and they can be presented in both very traditional but also in contemporary expression. So you'll find that Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander tourism operators and businesses, they certainly have an important sense that tourism is a platform where they can tell their story in an authentic way. And I've just got a couple of examples that I can sort of share with you. So the Discover Mundangilpai Authentic Indigenous Tours, it's a day trip from Cairns. And it's 100% owned and operated by Mundangilpai Yindinji Aboriginal Corporation, its agent company. And they provide a unique opportunity to meet Indigenous rangers and guides on their traditional country with exclusive access to the Indigenous Protected Reserve. It's the opportunity to discover, connect with the Mandingimpai Yindinji people, country and culture, and it lies between two sections of the World Heritage listed areas of the wet tropics and the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. And that's where you can learn traditional land practices such as fire management, hunting, gathering, harvesting of materials for shelter, tools, ceremony or art, and that's been essential for the maintenance of their culture. Many of the people moved to a mission known as Yarrabah early in the 20th century, and they continued to visit, camp, hunt and gather on that country. And they continued to care for country and its sacred places. And really, this tourism experience creates employment, social benefits for community, and also passing down tradition. And this is a tourism experience that's very active in the consumer marketing and trade space. So that's an experience that's 100% owned. We also have other experiences like Winyami tours, where you can discover the saltwater stories, legends, traditions of Winyami, which is Green Island, and more broadly, the Great Barrier Reef from the Gungindji and Yindinji people. And as you join them on a guided tour and learn about their cultural ceremony and life, and they have a connection to the land that spans thousands of years. And the program works closely with elders and young Indigenous leaders so they can deliver with authority on the saltwater people. And it's them telling their story. And the tours are significant to the Indigenous community, which is connected to Green Island, but it's also a career pathway that instills respects and honours while sharing and teaching their culture. And, you know, always we're looking to promote and support experiences that are authentic because we know that's what consumers are seeking. And this tourism operator or tourism experience is actually part of a well-established business. So it's not 100% owned by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, but they are a part of a business. And then you've got something like the Laura Aboriginal Dance Festival, which is actually coming up from the 7th to the 9th of July. And that's 3 days of camping. It's a festival that celebrates culture and recognises history. And you can feel the beat of clapsticks of 15 different tribes in an open area under shrub trees and supports the transference of culture. So where different communities from across Cape York Peninsula come together to celebrate with music, dancing and singing. And so we've got many examples I could talk through, but all across the state that are both really sort of leaning into those traditional practices, but also that celebrate the contemporary experience. And we've got art galleries like Baringa Gallery in Brisbane CBD that really sort of speaks to that, that sort of contemporary experience as well.
That festival sounds amazing. I wish I could come down and enjoy it for a few days. Unfortunately, I'm too busy here at my job. But a question here for Kun Montakarn here. So how can we use tours to promote and create interest in tangible cultural heritage, allowing people to earn an income from traditional skills and practices and keep them alive?
I'm actually very inspired by what Laura just told us, and I think she already answered my question anyway. But just from my perspective, I think all of our panelists here agree that the trend of tourism has changed, and people have just developed the interest to not just only arrive at a place, but to actually be able to relive their life in the place. And that's where the intangible heritage or living heritage comes in. Staying at historic homes like Nagasaki Castle that Mr. Stephen just showed us, that's one of the real living experience, so to say. And that experience of sleeping in an actual historic place can be heightened even more by not simply to dress up their costume, but also to lead their local way of life, to cook the food, to understand their belief system and rituals and so on. And so at UNESCO, we actually I think we're a little bit behind the Queensland for a bit, and we have to take a good example from there. We're soon to launch a new project with Thailand's Designated Area for Sustainable Tourism Administration, or DASTA, with support from ASEAN and Turkish government to build a network of tourism professionals that know how to maximize the use of intangible cultural heritage and creative industries in the local areas. And this is also tied into many touristic cities' aspiration to earn the status of UNESCO creative cities as well. So that's also one of the buy-ins in joining this capacity building program with UNESCO. And we really hope to get to use the great examples from Queensland as one of the case studies as well.
Sure, you'll be reaching out to Laura after this webinar to get more information about those case studies. So, I'll go to Mr. Lee about the next question here first, but I guess before the panelists as well. But, you talked about the hanuks and how you've sort of developed it over the years. Can you tell us about designing training programs for local communities in order to give them the skills needed to participate economically in cultural heritage tourism?
Actually, I want to talk about the problems we have and how we overcame that problem.
Sure.
So, like a Bukchon Hanok village is a place where residents actually live. As tourists began to flock to the area just to take a look around, the lives of the residents deteriorated and they rebelled. To solve this problem, the Seoul metropolitan government has stepped in as a mediator, and in 2018, the 8 measures to minimize damage to Bukchon Hanok village residents was created. The measures included introducing a tourist allowance time, accompanying guides for foreign group tourists, a tourist awareness campaign on prohibited behaviors, cracking down on illegal parking, and increasing the number of cleaning staff. That's what we learned.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Stephen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on our experience when it comes to training programs that are sensitive and to the local community's need. So at Airbnb, because we are a platform where we have both the host and the guest information on our hands, we can actually see who are the people hosting, who are the people booking. So what we have done is we have education programs that are targeted at both groups of community. For the host, we will educate them as to what are the things that you need to put in terms of your house rules, for example. So in your listing, maybe put in a little booklet or in a description, talk about what are the house rules. When you, let's use Hanok, for example, they tend to be in very residential areas, like Bukchon, for example. Now, if guests come and stay in that Hanok and make a lot of noise, throw a big party, they're going to cause annoyance to the neighbors. So we actually educate our hosts to say, prepare the house rule, make sure it's communicated carefully and clearly to the guest. For guests, we also have guest good behavior education campaign. We have created animation videos to teach guests as to when you come to certain parts of Asia, Korea, Japan, for example, when you enter a home, you need to take off your shoes because that's the practice. That's how people live their life. So in as much as we want to encourage people to enjoy the local culture, local heritage, we also think it's important for us to educate them so that they can respect the local tradition and local heritage. A lot of times it's just a matter of people not knowing, it's not because people are evil, it's just people did not know that this is how lives are led. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and I know, Stephen, I think I know Airbnb used to work with the I don't know if you still do, but work with the Ministry of Labor here in Thailand and doing training programs in other, in the secondary and tertiary destinations here in Thailand. But, Laura, I should ask that question because, very, sort of reconciliation, the indigenous culture there. I mean, it's a sensitive topic. How do you sort of, on one hand, train that to develop training programs that, but also on the other hand, educating people about that? I mean, it's an extremely sensitive topic there in Australia.
Yeah, certainly when it comes to cultural capability, I mean, there's two parts to that. There's those of us that are based here in Queensland and working in organisations like Tourism and Events Queensland, and part of our reconciliation action plan is to do just that, for all of us to become more understanding. So when we're working with Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples and going out to community, that we are understanding, even if we're going and doing photo shoots, all of that sort of thing. We have a program called the Transformational Experiences Mentoring Program that we run across the industry. And when we work with Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander experiences, we make sure those mentors have that cultural sensitivity and that cultural training. When it comes to the consumers, of course, we try to educate through our marketing, our social, our consumer website, things like that. But it's really in encouraging someone to come and have that experience. And it is through that experience they're learning about culture. And each individual Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander tourism experience will, provide some of that really hands-on cultural learning. So it's incumbent upon all of us, and at Tourism Events Queensland, we do take that seriously to have those sensitivities around the work that we do. And we're still all learning as well. I will say it's continual learning.
Yeah, well, it's important, right? You have to learn something new every day, and especially on a topic that is as sensitive as that. So I think Mr. Liew had touched on sort of this just before we got into the answer this question. But what are sort of the challenges, right? There's a delta from culture, heritage, and tourism. So what are the biggest challenges to overcome and pitfalls to avoid from either public, private, local community perspectives? Montakarn? You must see it a lot from the UNESCO perspective.
Well, we're going to go by the classic one. Like before, I would say before COVID, we would say mass tourism in overall, in all arts of it is our challenge, was our challenge. But today, as you see, we were not actually currently dealing much with mass tourism. On the other hand, we're actually wanting more people to come in, which is a natural thing of trying to rehabilitate. But at the same time, some part of the problems that still persist, for example, the over commercialization and cultural appropriation, which is something that came it came days and age for since the beginning of time or something. And when we try to package something for tourism, sometimes we leave out some of the crucial details that's actually quite they could be very trivial details for us, but it could be very crucial in the perspective of local people, so to say. So so I would say that would be some aspect of challenges that is still persisting over time, and it's something that could actually be avoided or be reduced if the public and private sector working closely with the civil society or local communities. So we also have one of the projects that actually trying to tackle this particular issue of cultural appropriation, which is in Thailand. That's where most of the projects that I'm working with. The project is called Field School Project. So Field School Project, Field and School Project, sorry, in which we work with indigenous peoples living within the natural World Heritage destinations like Thung Yai Naresuan Wildlife Sanctuaries and Gangrajan Forest Complex World Heritage Sites, as well as Andaman Sea Tentative List Site as well. We work to empower indigenous peoples to know how to professionally document and professionally communicate about their natures and cultures. So right now we're working with 6 communities from Pagaganyo and Plo Karen people in the mountains to the sea nomads like Morgan, Moglan, and Ulaklavo in the Andaman Sea. The aim is to, activities in the project aims to show how indigenous knowledge is important and integral to the preservation of the natural environment and forest. But at the same time, it also helps creating a kind of a communication materials fit for tourism as well to sensitize travelers about what is actually true or a myth about some group of indigenous people. As you know, like the perspective towards indigenous people actually worldwide is actually not to be fair with them. And the way that we are training them is also through the community-based tourism. So we actually are hoping to put in there to putting the power to design the travelers' itineraries in the hand of this group of indigenous people as well. So that's like a start point of what we're actually trying to re-tackle this particular challenges in the new decade.
And cultural appropriation is really difficult. I mean, it'd be, I can imagine it's completely different from Thailand to like Queensland, right? When wearing traditional dress in Thailand is sort of accepted, but maybe in Australia it might not be accepted to be sort of wearing traditional Aboriginal clothes. I said that is something which education will come into play. I mean, so yeah, I'll ask you, Laura, same question. What are the sort of the challenges that you face or the pitfalls that that need to be avoided?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's similar. We really just always want to present culture authentically and gaining permission for stories told. So, it is that cultural capability training. We've also at Tourism Events Queensland developed, creative guidelines. As I said earlier, it's understanding the sensitivities around particular communities, their local politics between members of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, native title, which I won't get into in this update. But it's also, understanding that just how unique the culture is. And also everything from also when we're working with artists and always ensuring that we have permission when using images like I've got behind me, and making sure that, if you're working with artists, that that it is artwork that has been produced by an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander artist, and they know that that's being sold, it's not manufactured elsewhere. So that authenticity is so key. So yeah, from us, that's where we really see some of the challenges. I will say, Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander cultures is a key pillar of the Queensland brand, and it's really important to us to elevate these cultures in our marketing, and in working with the tourism products and experiences and events, and to elevate those in our campaigns and in our storytelling, and again, ensuring permission for those stories to be told. So, those are certainly some of the challenges. It's just always ensuring that, we're working from a place of permission and cultural understanding.
And Mr. Lee, I mean, you talked a little bit about that before, about your challenges. I mean, what would you say to anybody of things that you should be careful to avoid, when you're doing, with your project, for instance? Like, if you had to do it again, what would you sort of be wary of and advise people? So, hey, these are the things that you should be aware of when we were doing our program in sort of the Hannah buildings. So pitfalls is sort of to avoid when you're doing the balancing between cultural heritage and tourism. Hello. I think maybe my sound didn't come in. Okay, we can all right, then I guess we'll skip that. I think that maybe it has some sound issues there. But we do have a question here. I'll jump to that. Hopefully Mr. Lee's sound can come back on. But this is a question here. It says, hello, I'm a PhD student in tourism development in Queensland. So I understand that many countries in the Asia Pacific region are rich in cultural heritage. where preservation and conservation efforts face challenges due to inadequate funding, lack of expertise, and insufficient infrastructure. This can result in deterioration and loss of valuable cultural sites and artifacts. What do you suggest to do to tackle this issue? It's a lot of issues to tackle, but I guess the first one would be funding, inadequate funding. Yeah.
I've got a point of view on this. I think it's important that we find public-private partnership in our efforts to preserve all this cultural heritage. I think a couple of the panelists have mentioned it. There is a limit to public funding, right? As a government or even as an international organization, there is a limit as to how much money you can grant to people to do conservation of whether it's a tangible heritage or intangible heritage, like some traditional dances or cuisine. So the private sector is here. The private sector, such as ourselves, we have a incentive to want to preserve and then promote some of this cultural heritage. We are monetizing in some way. Now, how do we then get private sector participants like ourselves to be part of that program? And then to make sure that some of the money that we make out of we monetize from the preservation actually go back into funding the program. So if we use the historical homes program that we have run in APAC, a lot of it is done in a public-private partnership manner. And then we also make sure that the onus is actually on the host, on the property owner, to put in also some money and effort to conserve the building in order to make it suitable for short-term accommodation. Now, the short-term accommodation is the way which I believe that will give them a sustainable, long-term viability of the preservation, because you need to constantly preserve, you need to constantly conserve. It doesn't mean that you do a preservation effort one time and then you can forget about it. 5 years later, you need to do more work. How is the homeowner or the property owner going to do that unless there's a sustainable source of income for him to continue to preserve the property? And that's where we come in. Thank you.
Rookie mistake, always on mute. Did any of the panelists want to sort of address that question as well, sort of funding? Or we can go to the next question. I'll go to the next question, I guess, so this is for, I guess it's for Ms. Laura. I'm finding that we have several reserve areas in North India, Pakistan, Bhutan, who are not comfortable working with tourism institutions. So how do you work with these reserves as a private entity? What is the most authentic, appropriate manner?
Was that one for me? Sorry.
Yeah, it says, yeah, the second question said, I'm finding that we have several reserve areas in North India, Pakistan, Bhutan, who are not comfortable with working the tourism institutions. I guess it means working with tourism institutions. So how do you work with these reserves as a private entity? What is the most authentic, appropriate manner?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Tourism Events Queensland is essentially a statutory authority of the state government. So we certainly have we report into the Department of Tourism, but there's also Department of Environment and Science. And there are times when we do go to the table and work with them, but generally speaking, those types of initiatives are led more by the state government than by us. We are ultimately a marketing and event organisation. We do some experience development, but we rarely are going into those protected areas and national park, even though we have tourism operators and experiencers who are based and working in some of those World Heritage areas, etc. And of course, there are always challenges and opportunities that come with that. So our role is more in helping facilitate some of those conversations rather than ourselves driving that. So it's possibly not quite the same setup in India, unfortunately. So I don't feel like I'd shed too much more extra light on that.
Well, thank you much for your answer. We have just a little time for one last question, which has just got here. So what about sustainability certifications for heritage properties? Mr. Lee, do you want to answer that question? Mr. Lee or anybody else?
Later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could Montakarn or
And
Laura?
Well, I try to understand the questions a bit, like in terms of sustainability qualification. I believe that
Certification. So hotels can get certified, sustainably certified. Yeah, so it'd be like a heritage property being sustainably certified.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
I'm not sure how many systems they have these days to certify such thing, because even like in the circle of the United Nations, we're still trying to find our foot when it comes to qualifying what is sustainable or not. But I mean, like as I know that there are like different systems and tools to certify like different levels, different aspects of tourism management, and that also links luckily to the sustainable development goals these days, like the GSTC, and UNESCO also has our own like the tool for tourism site, which is called the WeMass, which is also linked as a way to guarantee that as well that the site management is sustainable according to the framework of sustainable development goal as well. But for hotels or for like tourism services, I'm not so sure, like I'm not the expert in this particular field, but at UNESCO, what we are trying to do, we're working with Expedia Group right now, and we launched this thing called Sustainable Travel Pledge, which is targeting hotels. The hotels that sign the pledge have to also prove in like some actionable ways that they're trying to act to support local supply chains, for example, handicrafts, and to also support the reduction of single-use plastic. So that's actually one very tangible way of expressing the sustainability, so to say. It's not going to be a kind of like very straightforward certification. This is more like a pledge. So you actually plea to that you are going to do something, or you promise, you have your resolution to do something, and you try to achieve it in a very public relations perspective. That is, so that's my 2 cents on this.
No, I think we also worked with you guys as well with the plastics, right? We did it for Thailand. We did a modules that we launched last year, 2 years ago. For hotels and operators. Yeah, but I assume sustainability certifications for heritage properties are sort of more difficult than when sort of modern hotels and modern businesses. Heritage properties probably a little more challenging in that front. We're just about at the top of the hour. Does anybody want to add any other comments to that last question, or any last comments before we actually end this webinar here? Last thoughts? Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'd like to just thank all of our panelists for joining today, Mr. Lee, Khun Montakarn, Laura, and Stephen, and thank you to Airbnb for helping us co-organize today's webinar. So thank you guys so much, and thank you for your time, for being with us this afternoon, to sharing your thoughts on this very important subject of cultural heritage and tourism. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. All right. So before we end this webinar, I just want to do a quick wrap up and get this. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, again, thank you to our panelists, Stephen, Khun Montakarn, Laura, and Mr. Lee. Of course, thank you to Airbnb for helping us organize today's webinar. And if you enjoyed today's webinar, I just want to give you an update on some of our upcoming activities for your information. We do have our Pot of the Face of the Future Award. The submission deadline is in July 15th, so just a few weeks. So if you know somebody who could be the Pot of Face of the Future, feel free to nominate them. To learn more, To learn more about the PATA Face of the Future Award, please do visit our website or scan the QR code as you see on the screen. If you enjoyed today's webinar, we have another webinar coming up on July 27th. This is in partnership with Cvents. This is leveraging technology for sustainable events. So it'll be Cvents as well as we have speakers from Centara and Winnow as well. So if you want to learn more about leveraging technology for sustainable events, please do join us for that. Again, you can scan the QR code or visit our website to register or find more details about that particular webinar. And for our members who are here joining us today, please note we do have an upcoming PATA member meetup on Tuesday, July 11th. So if you're in the APAC regions in the afternoon, for you in Europe, it's in the morning. Of course, in the Pacific, it'll be in the evening. I'll just use Singapore times at 4 p.m. Singapore time. So you'll see what time those are there. For more information, again, visit our website to learn how to register for the PATA member meetup. And last but not least, if you don't know now, we do have our PATA Travel Mart this year happening in New Delhi, India from October 4th to 6th. So please do join us for that event. If you're a buyer, seller, or even just the conference delegates, feel free to go to our website to find out more details or scan the QR code for more information. So if you have any questions about today's webinar, about any of the activities I just mentioned, or about PATA and how to become a member at PATA, feel free to email me at paul@pata.org or go to our website at www.pata.org to find out more information. Once again, thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you, as always, to our members, our board members, our life members, our partners, our executive board for the continued support for the association. Without you guys, none of this is possible. And thank you to all of you for joining us here today. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar and stay safe. Hope to see you soon and take care. Bye.